let's go ahead and start on it. Probably today we'll let out a little bit early because we built a little bit. I sort of stuck with chapter 1 on 2 weeks on purpose, just to let people, where people are trying to find things and stuff, because I got some still don't know where packet tracer is, have no idea where to find the labs yet, etc. So that's part of the reasoning in doing 2 weeks on instead of, because I got several chapters had to be done over 2 weeks, and sort of just did that. 2601, people are just lost in that one, and I only gave them a week to do the first chapter, and so that's getting a little chaotic there. And then besides that, schools had some issues to top it off yesterday and such. Because yesterday, I don't know if any of you ran into it, but logging, Blackboard was running the whole time, but logging into Blackboard was a problem at certain times. And if you were already logged in and they got to playing with stuff, it didn't affect you. But it's when you went to log in that it wouldn't let you log in on and off at different times all day. And I don't know, I don't think they had, I know they haven't finished that one yet. Once they get through with doing the upgrade they're doing on that, of the single login, you're going to have to start using your whole email address as your username everywhere you log in at, instead of just the first part of it. So everybody needs to follow on that part. So when you go to log into email or Blackboard or Banner or whatever, if it doesn't take when you go to log in and it says it's invalid or whatever, turn around and try it with your whole email address, which is what they wrote us yesterday and told us at one point that if it doesn't work one way, try it the other way, but we're still trying to get it to work. And then they said we rolled it back because it was messing up on it bad, but they were going to keep on working to set it to this new way, because they say it will be more secure. I'm not sure how that will be more secure. It will be more aggravating, I'll know that we got to type out longer. If somebody knows your full email address, or if they know the first part of your email address, they knew the full email address, and that's not, that part's not private information anyway. But that's what they say. It's supposed to make it more, the systems more secure. So we'll see on that one. So just be aware on that. I had not activated the first test for this class until last night. I thought I did it last week, but obviously I didn't. It's not due till next Tuesday. So somebody tried it last night and wrote me and told me that it was saying it wasn't activated, and did I have any idea what in the world was wrong? And I went, yeah, I hadn't activated it. So, and I looked in, that was an online student, I looked in the other two sections and they weren't activated in there either. So apparently when I did 2601, I checked it off in my mind of having done them all. So I don't know, but in any event, it is there for y'all now through next Tuesday. Remember, next Monday is a holiday, okay? So that will be there through Tuesday for you. All right, so they're continuing in the chapter, and the recordings from last week I should get put out there right after class, because I did convert out of the two classes, the two sections that we've got, and that we had 2 sessions on last week. I managed to end up with a workable recording from one of the sessions in each class, and it happened to be the correct combination on that. So the intro's out of one class, actually it's y'all's class, I think is the intro, and the chapter 1 is out of the Catoosa class. I don't know what happened in here, but my recorder didn't have any recording on it from last Thursday. And I was sure I had told it to record, but apparently it didn't. So, but I had recorded over there, but in the Catoosa class, I hadn't had my recorder with me on Monday, and I recorded it on the phone, and it did not come out good at all. I don't know what my phone's problem was with that, but it wasn't usable, because you can't hardly hear anything. So, but I've got both of those uploaded to YouTube, because I was doing that when I went to bed late last night, and that they were uploading at that point. One of them had actually uploaded at that point, but it was after midnight, and Blackboard had logged me off, and I was going to have to log back onto Blackboard to put the links, to put the link in, and I went, no, I'm not doing that. But I just wait till this morning, and then I ran a little late this morning, but I was on y'all's classes till 1 o'clock. And then I had a student come in that I had to help him with his machine for the last pretty much the hour, and then I was late getting in here for y'all because the copier ran out. The printer that we've got in the office down there ran out of black toner just before time for the class, and the other guy in there asked me if I knew how to change it, and I said, hopefully I remember from last time, because Ms. Beam and I changed it last time, and it took us like 2 hours or something to change the toner, because in that printer there's 2 different things of toner in it, which we didn't know. And she and I went to where we're used to changing toner on printers, changed that, and I don't know what that is, but it didn't phase it. And that she and I were going crazy, and trying to find the cartridge in the first place to fit in there. And we finally called former secretary and asked her, how in the world do you change this? And she said, oh, y'all are changing the wrong one. You got to change it from in the front and not on the side. And so I went, hopefully I can remember, and I did remember correctly. So that got done pretty quickly, but that took a couple of minutes. And so I was just late getting down here. All right. Next thing they talk about in the book is the different components that you have in a network out there. And they talk about that these fall into basically 2 categories out there. That there's end devices and there's intermediary devices. The end devices are the devices really that most people think about on network that don't know much about networking, that don't know anything about networking. That's the devices they're used to. That's your computers, your printers. That's where you would be putting information in or information's coming out. Does that make sense? So that could be computers, it could be your phone, it could be printers, cameras could be on there. Actually, storage devices would fit there also, which we'll talk about a little bit later in here. Because you can have a storage device that's hung on the network, and that's an end device there, because it's not where information is just passing through it, the information is stored on it. Does it make sense to everybody? So it's either where we're entering information in or getting information out, or it stops there for some reason. Okay? So you've got a variety of things that you can use as end devices. That's just a few of them that they mention in the book, which basically is the PCs, your laptops, your phones, anything else in that whole range of things, your printers, cameras, etc. Okay? And storage devices. Throw them in. Intermediary devices are going to be the devices that connect your network together. So in the drawings all of them, you see that's what's out there. That's when it leaves your machine to go somewhere. It's got to go through other devices to get to wherever it's trying to send that information to. Does that make sense to everybody? You've got routers out there and you've got switches out there. It's the primary 2 that you're going to have out there. The book draws in an additional drawing for you right there of firewalls also on there. which firewalls would fit there. But firewalls really, sometimes they are standalone firewalls there. But in that case, in any event, they're basically still just a router sitting there that's got more features to it. Okay? But it could be a standalone firewall that's sitting there, but it's really still doing routing capabilities on it to handle it. So they throw you those as the intermediary devices, and it's just places where the information is going to pass through, going from its source to its destination. So it's just stops along the way. But it's not where it started from or where it's ending up. So it connects everything together. The routers are going to connect your various networks together. Okay? So that's what a router does. It connects different networks. The switch is going to connect a number of devices together to send them across one wire. Okay? Now, you've got a lot of devices out there today that are a combination of switches and routers. So that actually, that box there is a switch and a router. Because it's a router because it's connecting your outside network, whoever your provider is, their network, to your network in your house. Okay? It's also a switch because it's not just connecting those two items together, but it allows you to connect a number of devices into it to that one network. Okay? So you're connecting stuff to the network in your house on it, and you're connecting out to the outside network. Does that make sense? If we look at these more expensive routers, it's just a router. All it's got, in this case, is just two connections for the networks. So we've got one network coming in, one network going out. Now, on some of them, we could actually put more than two networks connecting together. Yeah, this one. So that this one, we've got several more spots we can stick in more network connections into it. Now, if you notice there are, it looks like some connections here, but that's not connections for you to connect your PC to your network. That is one of those, actually a couple of those. Well, actually it will let you connect directly into one of the networks, but not really. Mainly it is that you're using the console port or you're using this other, because it's a way to plug into this box and configure this box. Okay? With the console port being the better one to do on, although you could go through the two regular Ethernet ports here. And you could actually get into your network through that there, but you're really not. But notice it's only two ports in there. It's not 4 or 8 or whatever. So that when we look at the switch box.
So is it still a switch even if it's wireless? Different devices going in it?
So that your wireless access point is really a switch.
Okay.
Because you've got a number of devices. Could be a switch, it could be a hub type approach on it.
Okay.
Okay? Hub one just connects them all together and everybody sees everything traveling across, which is really happens a lot of times still on wireless on it now. Switch, each device only sees what's directed to it and doesn't see the traffic going to the other devices on the switch, which makes the switch run a whole lot faster than the hub. So normally you got switches out there today, but you're still using hubs for some other stuff. Not necessarily for networking, but like if you get you could get a USB hub so you could have more plugs to plug USB devices in. Because on one USB port you can plug 128 devices if I'm remembering right.
That's a lot.
Okay. But they're all sharing that same signal. If you get a USB switch, which I haven't seen out there, then it would dedicate that. But on the network, you definitely want switches instead of hubs so that each device only gets its own traffic, which effectively makes everybody on the switch run at full speed. Whereas on a hub, if you've got 10 devices plugged in on a hub, each device is only get 1/10 of the actual speed of that. network. So if you switch a hub out with a switch, you will definitely see a speed increase. Every time I've replaced a hub with a switch, everybody's been impressed with how much faster the network got. And all I did was change the hub and a switch. The switch, normally, you can tell a switch because it's going to have a whole bunch of ports in it. Okay? That one up there, the cheap one for the home use, obviously only has 4 ports because you don't have a lot of devices usually plugged into it. But notice that one's a wireless too, so it is a wireless wired switch. It's bringing in the wireless stuff into the switch on one interface. Okay? Here we've got 24 ports on it. So that's a switch right there. Now, telling the switch apart from the hub, just looking at it from outside, unless it says on it, you don't know. Because that's actually a hub sitting there. Okay? You got to know what is it doing inside. Is it got processing capabilities like that one does, or is it pretty much a dumb device sitting there? Okay? So really, this is just, the hub is really just a wiring center. An organized wiring center connecting all the devices together. So this thing's probably close to 20 years old.
So why would you even use a hub in the first place? Why not just go with a switch?
Nowadays, you want to just use a switch.
Okay.
20 years ago, switches cost a whole lot more than hubs did.
Okay.
Okay, and then the price of switches came down as they developed the switches and they got the computer processing in there and everything cheaper. And so now you're really going to find that the switches are cheaper than the hubs usually. And you're really not going to find hubs out there anyway. We still got them left over as antiques. And for me to show just demonstrations. But you wouldn't want to use that at all. Although it would still work. But the other part would be if you looked at that, you'd notice the speed on that. 10 megabits is the fastest connection on that, where this one is using hundreds, and some of them we've got in here have got on the 1,000 speed ports on. It just depends on how old it is, because the equipment we got in here sits a variety of ages from the last 20 years or so. Because we can keep on using the older stuff, because it works the same way as far as configuring it, but it may have faster ports on them now, which you might not want to use in production, but as far as how you set it up, it would be the same way. And when y'all are just setting up lab stuff, it doesn't make any difference. Is it a real fast port or a real slow port? And you can't tell the difference when you're sitting right there at it and not really doing production on it. All right. Y'all follow on switches and hubs, and we'll talk about those later on some too. But and if you go into some place and go to looking at their equipment, or they tell you their network's slow and such, and you go to look at their equipment, they got hubs sitting there, the very first thing to do is tell them they need to get switches. You go get them new switches, and they're going to be impressed right off the bat. Because it will, literally, it will be, depending on how much equipment they're running off of it, will be how much faster it is. The more equipment they're running off of it, the faster it will speed up. Because what effectively happens on the hub, everybody sees everything. There's no control of what, anything that comes into there goes out every port. Does everybody follow on that? So on the switch, what comes in, the switch has got full processing capability in there. It looks at that packet that comes in, looks at it and says, it belongs on this port. And that's the only place it sends it out, unless it doesn't know which port it belongs on. Okay, but it knows who's on every port. Now, ideally, you've only got one device sitting on every port, but you could have multiple devices hanging off there, because you could have another switch hanging off a switch or whatever. Okay, But still, you're limiting what goes out of port only belongs on that port. So we're following that? So then that effectively means you're just about up to full speed then, because the only stuff going across any wire is just what belongs going to it. It doesn't have all the extra traffic. So 10 devices are sharing it. Now going across one wire is only one device's traffic, versus before it was 10 devices traffic was going across that wire. Guess what? If we go out on the highway and we take away, and pretty much gives you a dedicated 4-lane highway out there and nobody else is using it because everybody else has their own 4-lane highway, you can go a whole lot faster on it, right? If one of you would build that through downtown Atlanta for me and build the Dwight Expressway, I would appreciate it.
They had that new one.
Huh?
They have the Peach Pass now.
Yeah, but I'm not gonna pay for that. And I'm not, and a lot of times I've watched over there on those lanes that sometimes they're not running as fast anyway.
Yeah.
It's just like the HOV, I have actually watched over there on the HOV that there's times I'm going by the people in the HOV lane.
Because I went to my cousin's house, he lives in Dunwoody, and that Peach Pass is backed all the way up, and the interstate moved just fine.
And they tell you, but when you get to the entrances, they're telling you what the speeds are running on. The regular road versus the Peach Pass went on. Usually it is more clear on it, but I'm going, prices on that is just too expensive in my opinion. I don't want to be spending that kind of money on it, but if I have to wait a few more minutes going through, that's okay. Instead of spending a couple of dollars or whatever each time through. They don't pay me that much here at school. Contrary to what some people think, and then like I told y'all, I write newspaper articles, but I don't get paid for that. I do a lot of stuff I don't get paid for. If I got paid for a lot of stuff I did, I wouldn't even need to worry about if I'm using Peach Pass or not, because when you're driving me down through Atlanta, that's your problem, not my problem. Because I could hire somebody to drive me around there. So, because initially when they did the Peach Pass on the south side of Atlanta for a good while, they had it just at 50 cents, no matter when it was. And I was going, oh, I'm thinking about doing that. That's not too bad. And over there on North 85, I'll see it drop down to 2 to 5 cents sometimes in off hours on it. But usually that when it's the heavier traffic out there, and that's partly how they're pricing it, is that I've seen it $1 for the 10 miles, $2. The 85 I've actually seen up to $10 for the 10 or so miles of it. So you see all kinds of, that one on 85, they do the most variable pricing on it. For 75, it seems like they've got pretty much a rush hour price and they've got a non-rush hour price on it. But the concept's supposed to be on it, that it's supposed to be, depending on how much traffic is using it versus how congested the other traffic is, that they decrease the price on it. That if there's not much traffic in the regular lanes, that they drop the price on it. If there's a lot of traffic over there, and so more people are going to be wanting express, to run the price on it. And so it's supposed to be variable on it. But right after they opened the first ones on 85, prices were really high, and they didn't have anybody using it. I remember the governor saying after a week or two of it that he ordered them to drastically cut the prices on it and come up with a different pricing scheme on it, because it was just way out that and nobody was using it. So we'll see what happens. All right, so now you know what an end device is. You know what an intermediate device is. The other part is that they're showing you symbols on these as they're going along, and they sort of show you about that what the shapes of these things are over on page 15, that routers are normally, when you see drawings for them, and usually they're simpler drawings than this because they're showing more in terms of a device off of the drawing, but usually you'll see for routers that you won't see a nice little colored in picture and everything like that, but y'all can't do that when you're just drawing it, and even when y'all are in packet tracer, that you'll notice it's a real simple little thing there usually, that the router will usually just be that. Okay, it'll be a circle with 2 crossed lines in it. Now, if it's drawn out completely correctly, it's got little arrowheads on each of the ends of the arrows. And that is that it's those networks connecting all in there, and that's where they came up with that. So, y'all follow on that? And so it's a circle with that X in there, or plus sign, really plus sign, but it could be an X. As long as you got those 2 lines crossed, they don't have to be vertical or whatever. That's going to be your router. The switch is going to be a rectangle. Okay? And it's going to have 2 lines drawn in it across with little arrows on the end of them, which sometimes you don't see the arrows on there. But with 2 lines in it, and it's the rectangle one, because that's where you can plug in a number of devices, and so then you'd have a number of devices drawn going into it. Where on this, you're just going to have a couple of things into it, okay? As we just saw on the routers, that a lot of times just 2, but it could be more devices plugged into our router. So I showed you that there are, on the newer ones we've got, you can actually swap them in now. The other advantage of that one is we've got copper connections on it, is what came with it. But if we had fiber for our network going into our wiring area, we can put a fiber connection into that same box. And all you gotta do is just change out that connection on it. And that you can have it using fiber or using wired. And if you got faster than what was the connection you had in there, or port you had in there, you can replace the port with a faster port. So making it modular makes it, it's going to have a longer life to it. Now, they're very basic. They actually are, a router actually is a computer, because it's got processing capability and everything in there. And actually, you can take any computer and make it into a router if you just put 2 network interface cards in it. Because then you can connect the 2 networks, and at that point, you're connecting 2 networks together, so you're a router. So just a regular PC can be a router. Does that make sense to y'all? Likewise, inside there, it's a PC in there, but it's very limited. So it's only got, I think it's 4K or 16K of memory in it. Okay? But it's only doing, well, on the newer ones, you can actually do some GUIs on them, but most of the time, a lot of time you're just doing text-based entry. So you're just doing command line entry in. So it doesn't need much memory or storage for it. And it just uses flash storage in there. As a matter of fact, the new ones, if you look at them, like that one, it's just got a little flash card in it for its storage. So it's just got a flash card in there for its storage location, which happens to just be a 32 megabit card. Okay? So not any big amount of storage on it. The nice part about this versus up on that one is built in on that one, and this one, if something goes wrong with this one, we can just take the flash card out, go to another one, stick it in, put the stuff in, and be off and running. That one, you got to get stuff off of it and install it onto the other, and then put it onto the new device. But flash memory has not been that much, as far as removable flash memory is not that old. All right, network media is the next one they talk about. So we've talked about the devices on the network, and we're going to talk a whole lot more about them as we go through the book. Okay? Likewise, the media we're going to talk a whole lot more as we go through the book, but they want to introduce to you what is network media. Basically, it's going to split in three categories. One is wired, one is fiber optic, and one is wireless. Okay? So that you could have copper media, which could be coaxial cable, and you still got coax stuff running out there, because if you're running through cable or whatever, you may well, you're probably going to use at least some coax along the way on it. They may well be using fiber to go down your street, but when it comes into your house, that it's coax carrying it from the pole to the house and into the box. Although you could have fiber to the house, and you could have fiber all the way to that box, that you could have fiber in the house then. Okay? And you could have fiber to your individual machine, because you could run fiber all the way to your PC. It's going to be fast. It's going to be expensive. Okay? So copper could be coax, not as much on the coax, but it's still around. Mainly copper is going to be twisted pair. And that's what we're going to work with when we make patch cables. We're going to use the twisted pair to make the patch cables for that. Okay? And there's a variety of different types of twisted pair that you could use, and we'll see coax actually used to have a variety of stuff too, although you're really pretty much working off one coax type now. So you'll see later in the book about those different versions of cables and stuff. And that it gets faster, and there's newer stuff out there. Fiber, there's a number of different ones on that you can have, because fiber, the tube in it can be plastic or glass. The glass is going to be faster than the plastic. The glass is also harder to handle, because it is literally a glass tube running down through there, and that the light just runs through that little glass tube. Corning is the predominant maker of that, and that's out there for it. Copper is real easy to just put anywhere, and that you can bend it all kinds of ways and do all kinds of stuff with copper and still work. Fiber, you're much more limited on how sharp you can bend it, and then you have to be a lot more careful, because, say, it's glass in a lot of cases in it, and even if it's plastic, it is a real small, thin piece of plastic in there. It's got a little hole through it that sends the signal through. And if that tube breaks, it won't work. Okay, and if you make the angle too sharp in it, the signal won't go around it. It's a light wave going down through it. On copper, you don't have that problem. You're not supposed to make the turn too sharp on copper, but you can get away with making it too sharp and still work. Okay? So the fiber will run a whole lot faster. There's several different varieties of fiber out there. And so depending on what type of fiber you're using and the connectors you're using on it, which we won't go into how to do those, that gets a little more complicated to put the fiber connections on there, although they have simpler ones now out there. But you have to be careful how you put them on, and cutting the fiber and being somewhat sanding that glass end and stuff on it and stuff to make sure it's smooth and everything. If anything gets in the way, it messes it all up. It could be a laser signal going through it, or it could be an LED signal going through it. The laser one's going to be faster than the LED. Okay? You don't want to hold a fiber cable up and look into it if it's got a signal going through it, because if it's a laser going through it, it will burn your eye out. Okay? Because it is a full laser signal going through it. You can kill your eyesight with. You have to be a little careful with those on. And we'll look at some stuff on that later on. Somewhere, chapter 6, 7, and 8, somewhere along there, we're going to get into all the cabling stuff. And we'll also get into subnetting along in that part too. So there's going to be some more stuff there. So we'll look at those. I'll bring in a number of samples of some stuff to show you all on those. But those, the two of them. The third one is that you could do wireless. The media is actually air, because you're just sending the signal through the air. And then that you're just relaying through that. Different things getting in the way can block that signal. So walls can block the signal. With wired, you have to be careful of, sometimes devices will give problems to it. That if we're running the wires through the ceiling in here, we don't want to run them over fluorescent light fixtures, because we'll have interference we'll pick up from that. And the wire, that's your signal level. So you want to go around the fluorescent light fixtures. Microwave ovens will also mess up wire, because the wire will pick up that microwave signal. So there's advantages to using each of them at different places and disadvantages to using each of them at different places. So, because there's sometimes you can't do wired or fiber in a place, because if it's a historical building or whatever, they really want you to do wireless so you don't impact the building. Depending on how you've got to run it in there, you may need to do wired because you can't get the fiber, because the fiber just wouldn't work going through there. In other cases, you may need to run fiber. I thought I was going to have to run fiber in one industrial plant that I was wiring for them one day, because how much interference I knew was coming off their stuff. But the fact we ran it up to the 20-foot ceiling and across the ceiling, got it out of their interference where it still picked up a little bit of stuff, but it didn't affect what they were doing significantly. And so it worked fine with the wired. But I had to make sure I covered all my connections and everything well to keep the interference down on. A lot of times you end up having to run fiber in those situations, because fiber is not subject to that type of stuff. Does that make sense? That it's not subject to interference on outside stuff. Security-wise also, fiber can be a lot more secure than wired or wireless. Wireless is going to be your least secured because everybody can pick it up. Wired, it's really easy to wiretap it, whatever. You go out and cut it and stick another device right in it, or you can put devices right up by it and pick up what's going through that wire. Just having it pick up the signals, laying close to it. Fiber, you would actually have to cut the fiber and stick a device in there on it and connect that back together for you to be able to get the signal going through there. Normally. Now, some things I've read recently says there are some devices you can put by, new stuff that you can put by fiber and pick up something about what's in there, but I really haven't seen that work. I've just read that supposedly that can be done, but I'm not sure if that's just supposedly. Okay? But fiber is considered a secure one. So if it is a secure facility, you're going to normally see a lot of their stuff going through fiber all through the building. The other part is you can also secure your building some more just by putting a metal plating around the outside of the building to stop wireless signals from leaving the building. So you can secure it up some just on architecture on it.
What kind of metal would that generally be?
From what I can gather, just aluminum or steel would work fine.
Just normal
Some type of
industrial
metal,
steel.
because metal is going to stop that signal from, it's not necessarily going to totally stop it, but it's going to pretty much stop it so that somebody can't stand outside and pick up the signals inside. But there'll still be some leakage on it, but it'll be very little. And so there are places, because I know as I'm studying for Security Plus, that's one of the practice questions I keep seeing about what would be if we put a metal sheathing on the building to keep the signal in the building or getting out of the building. What type of security is that? And that's a physical security because we're putting up something physically to block the signal. Now, how many places are going to do that? But the other part is, it does sometimes, you get signal blocked anyway because of walls, etc. At my church, I went to try to do to run wireless from their office to the sanctuary so we could get our signal into the sanctuary, and I could not get a signal into the sanctuary no matter what. I could get it up close to the sanctuary, never could get into the sanctuary. We've now actually got it wired into the sanctuary and run wireless in there, which keeps the signal outside the sanctuary from that box. And the one in the office, you pick up another part of the building, but not in the sanctuary. But when we had a second telephone company coming into town where I am down there, that they came in and basically did it for free at the church. Ran us, because we had a telephone line already out, because I run the sound system for the church, and it's a larger church. We've got 600, 700 members or something. And they went ahead and ran a line in just for internet for us out there and gave us an internet connection. A real slow one that I had to have them speed up recently when we started broadcasting on Facebook. I discovered we were too slow for that. You got to have at least a 5 meg upload to effectively broadcast on Facebook. If you got less than that, it's all choppy and everything. They drove me crazy for a little bit there trying to get it out there decently. And they went, oh, you've only got 1 meg upload. And I read something, they told me on that, and then they told me that that was all I had. And I checked, and somebody said they could get them to come increase it. And they said they'd come increase it for a few weeks for me, but you see if that worked. It worked. So then I don't think they're even charging us for the difference on it. They sort of just give it to the church on that connection. Because we only use it on Sunday morning, and we barely use it normally. Now we're using it a little bit more because we are using broadcasting on Facebook on it. But prior to that, all we were usually using the internet connection for was we would download the file that we used to run the service that I had done at home and uploaded to Dropbox, and then I downloaded it there at church. And before we had the internet connection, I stuck it on a flash drive and carried it in on a flash drive, or whoever was going to run it. I emailed it to everybody that might be running it each week, and then we write it in. I still email it to if somebody else is running it, so that if they want to look at it at home or check it or whatever, and that they can bring in on flash drive if they want. And if Dropbox was to foul up, they can go to their email and get it. I don't have full trust of everything. But it turned out why I couldn't ever get the signal into the sanctuary, and now that we do have a signal in the sanctuary that will go out. Finally, when I told several people, one guy told me when I was telling him trying to get it in there, and I knew the other problem was going to be running a wire into there. I had a firewall to go through, a literal brick firewall. Not firewalls in computer, but building firewall, which is where the term firewall came from. And it was a brick one, and that has to stay solid. And you can run a wire through it, but if I punched a hole in it to run the wire through, I was going to have to seal it back around the wire. But getting through a outside brick wall, that was, I really think it was a couple of, it at least had 2 layers of brick and probably a layer of concrete block in the middle, or else a 3rd layer of brick in it, I'm not sure. Church was built in the 50s, but when we went to remodel it a few years ago, and the guy I was talking to had sort of supervised the project, and they completely remodeled it. We put in a whole new ceiling, and if they'd done the ceiling like we talked about, I was going to run the wire that way, but we didn't do it in the end, because they were going to put actually 4 across the top of the ceiling, so you could go across, and they were going to put in fancier lights. You could go then lift them up, because it's a 30-foot ceiling in the room, that you could lift it up and change the bulb and drop it back in. Well, to save money, they didn't do either one of those. Needless to say, we've got different burned out bulbs in there, because you got to go out there and bring in scaffolding to climb up there, or one of the little machines, and you really can't do with the machine because you got all the fuse in the way, obviously, which can't be moved. So you're pretty much stuck when you got to move scaffolding all around in there to get up to it. Now we're talking about that. We were just talking the other day. We need to change them to LED lighting so we don't have to change these things every 20 years instead of every 4 or 5 years. And they tend to burn out pretty quickly sometimes. So I was going to run the wire across the top, but since they didn't do that, I couldn't run it across the top because there's no way I was going to go crawling across the ceiling with a 30-foot drop below it if I missed where I'm stepping. Right? The fall might not be too bad, but when I hit, it's a problem. And I've done that one time, so I don't need to do that again. And that was only from 8 feet. So it turned out those walls in there, and when I say well, I guess it's probably about 60 years old now. It was built in 56, I guess it was. I think it's when it was built, somewhere right around there. So it's around 60 now. But not that old of a building, okay? Turned out that it's not sheetrock walls that all the walls are in there. They're actually real plaster walls. Now, if you're going to do real plaster walls, what do?
Put metal up.
Hmm?
You put metal up.
Uh-huh. You've got all that chicken wire basically around in there, because that's basically what they put up there to hold the plaster in place. And guess what? When you put that mesh all the way around that room in there of all that metal mesh, not only that, it was mesh, and mesh does a better shielding job than just solid metal.
Just traps the signal.
We just secured the sanctuary off from everywhere else around. So it's had that mesh all the way around the room, 30-foot high mesh. So no signal was going to go over it, as opposed to if we just put mesh around this room in here, put wall plaster up. That's not that high, and signal could come across it or go under it, whatever, to a degree. But think about 30-foot walls all the way around. You've pretty well sealed it off. And when the guy told me that had headed up the remodeling project, when we remodeled it, because we bought a real nice organ and had to rebuild the front to put this big, beautiful pipe organ in to get all the pipes in and everything. And he said, all of those walls, except for that one at the front where we got the pipes, are all plaster, not sheetrock, on mesh. And I went, oh, okay. I said, you answered that question for me. He said, because it had broken several places, and they replaced the ceiling in the process at that point. And he said they discovered it and then all that put in back then. And so that was the way we had to do it. So you can secure it well if you put a metal around it. And like I say, mesh will actually work better than solid metal for you. So you could just, if you wanted to make your building more secure and keep it looking somewhat more common to it, instead of going to some metal siding to it, you could go to a stucco approach on it and put the mesh up to put your stucco on. And then you've secured out in there. You're not going to get signal in, you're not going to get signal out. It's going to block it. It's just going to catch it on it there. When I say mesh is a good one on it. So just be careful on those. Be aware of the network media, that they show you several types. And like I told you, the environment, the speed you need, etc., all come into play. Because if you want the highest possible speed, you're going to do fiber. If you're going to make it where it's accessible no matter where you're going to be around in there, you want wireless. And like in this building, we got wired and we got wireless, and actually connecting building to building, it should be fiber, but I don't know that for sure. I know when I wired Swainsboro Tech at the same time this place got wired, and every other tech school that was around this building wasn't wired at that point because it didn't exist, but the other part of the campus, the older part of the campus was, that we did fiber between the buildings. We had twisted pair in the building, and then we did fiber connections back in '91 between buildings. Because you had the amount of traffic combined going across, and we did fiber that way. We've got fiber between the campuses, I know that. They dropped fiber from here to Rome, and we should have fiber dropped probably from here. I think we got fiber from here to Dalton and fiber from here to Catoosa. And then Gordon and Polk are fibered off of Floyd. And then they show you the representation, which I already told you about. And you'll actually see wireless will usually be little dotted, or they've got it little coiled on here in their little drawing. But you'll also see sometimes just a dotted line to represent wireless. And then if it's just LAN media, which we'll talk about that definition in just a second. So if it's just in our network, straight line. If it's going out across the internet, you usually use the lightning bolt. Okay? Because that's interesting to throw you about LAN media and WAN media right there, and then it's going to be several more pages before they tell you what a LAN and a WAN is. I told you sometimes, and that's why sometimes I jump around on you. The next thing they do talk about, though, is topologies. Well, they talk about the network interface card and tell you about that one that's got a physical port on it, and that's actually an interface to out there to the world or to your network. You do still have some network interface cards around as separate cards, but normally the NIC is now built into the motherboard. Okay, but it's still a separate thing that's on that motherboard. Although it's not a separate board there, but it's a separate area on the board. Does that make sense? But they integrated into the motherboard now. Because if you think back to the original PCs, there was no network connections on them. And then when networking got going through the 80s, because PCs started back there about 1980, depending on which brand, depends on which year around that, but about 80. And that networking really didn't start catching on until you got to the later 80s. And so then you were still building the machines without the network connection on them. You bought a separate card to go longer. And that then you went with, that you were also doing with the telephone connections, and so then you went to building internal modem cards instead of having an external modem. The phone line could just plug straight into your computer, instead of plugging through a box that plugged into your computer. And every time a lightning storm came through, whichever place I was living, I knew if we had a thunderstorm during the night, because the next day I'd have several calls from people that had burned out their modem card in their computer, and their computer was dead or whatever, and I'd go, and almost always all it was the modem was burned up, pulled the card out, the machine went to work, and I was always carrying around several extra modem cards in my car, so when those calls came in, I could replace them and sell them the card. I think there's actually a modem card still sitting in the trunk of my car out there. I think I saw the other day. But then it may be an Ethernet card, but it's one of the two sitting out there. And it's probably just a 10100 Ethernet card, not 1,000. Okay? It's been there for a little while. That I just saw it. But I literally did used to keep one or two cards sitting in my car all the time, because, say, I would know the next morning by 10 o'clock if we had a thunderstorm the night before, because there'd be somebody calling that either they couldn't connect out onto the internet, or sometimes their machine was completely dead. And I'd go, okay. And I'd go, did we have a storm last night? Yeah. Okay. Probably your problem's not that bad. Now, they did take a direct hit to it. It's a whole different thing. And my church has had that happen twice, that we've burned some machines. Burned a bunch of equipment up there, the sound and video stuff. But we took a direct hit on the steeple, and the grounding rod for some reason didn't exactly work right, or we took a hit somewhere else. We've got a copper wire running down our steeple that big around. If you get up there into the steeple and look, you can see where it's grounded with lots of stuff because there's black marks all coming off of it, all along the brick wall that goes down through, which is where it took strikes and it grounded it. But they actually had, one problem was at one point somebody had laid an electrical cord right across that wire. And guess what? When the church got hit then, it just went, when it went to ground, because the wire was doing what it was supposed to be doing, well, as it went down the wire, it went to the first thing we do ground for it, which was that wire, which ran it through the church, burning up all kinds of stuff. So you never do know. So you've got physical ports, which is where you actually plug it into. The interface is how it effectively is connected. But it's not the physical connection. So it works with the port. So you do still have NICs, and that you're still going to talk about NICs on it, but it's not normally a standalone network card anymore, but it's integrated into the motherboards. Does that make sense to everybody? But you do still have devices with separate network interface cards or NICs. Topology, they talk about that briefly. We'll talk about that a whole lot more. I think chapter 9 or so is late in the course. And that's the layout of our network. There's logical topologies and physical topologies. And if y'all have already started into Packet Tracer, you notice in there it's actually showing you a logical topology is what you're working with. It's showing you how the devices effectively all hook up. But it's not showing you in terms of this device is in this room, this device is in another room. It actually does show you that also for you, that you can set all of that stuff up. Because up there at the top, there's a choice to be a logical topology or a physical topology. And that then you can see how you've actually got these devices all laid out. Okay? In terms of what's physically, not just how it's effectively working. Does that make sense to everybody? Because in here, these are all actually on a star network, leading back to a switch box across the hall. And that we've got all of these wires running out, and a bunch of bundles of wires, and we put the ceiling tiles in the hall, bundle running down, and runs back into there and runs into the switch box. And so there's a star coming off where it looks like in here to you, but they're all just one right after the other. But they're really separate one wire running from each of your devices back to that box. Does that make sense? So a physical topology would show this room with all of these devices wired that way on it, but you'd see that it was in all 20 of these are in this room, the next 20 are in the next room, and so on. Logical, we just see a circle, a drawing with the switch in the middle, and then all of the 20 devices all coming off of the switch. Or the 40 devices between these two rooms probably coming off the same switch. Okay? Does that make sense?
So the physical ones show like the different rooms and all the devices in each room.
And if you, I'm like on for you to go further with Packet Tracer, I still got to get y'all on the course for that. I'll try to do that today. Way too much stuff setting stuff up, and then I've had to somewhat create some of the stuff again from scratch type thing. You'll see if you go to the physical, you can show a number of different devices. Saturday, when I was working with cybersecurity teams over in Dalton, high school teams, in their national competition, they were using Packet Tracer as one of their things in competition, and they had to work with street lights. They were working on the physical topology of it. That had street lights and motion detectors that turned the street lights on and off, along with some computers in City Hall and something else. They had to work with the motion detector to turn that street light on and off, and the street lights, depending on what time they said it was, the street lights also turned off and on. And then when they had it, see motion occur. So, which they did in the physical topology in Packet Tracer, using identically the same Packet Tracer we all use. So there's just about unlimited things you can do with the Packet Tracer. All right, so, but we'll come back and talk more about that a lot more later, okay? They're just introducing terms to you. So topology is just a map of your network. And think about it with Google Maps. You've got a logical view, you can look at stuff, and you can look at the physical view. Because we can look at it on there where it shows all the trees and what the yards look like and everything else, or we can just see it as the lines drawn where the streets are, but not seeing what everything is around on it, where it's not the picture of everything. We're not seeing the buildings sitting there and everything else. And sometimes one topology works better than the other topology in Google Maps, right? Because if you went to find First Methodist Church in Swainsboro, probably a logical topology to getting down there would be nice, but that physical topology would be nice once you got on Main Street to know here's what the buildings are and the spot where it's going to be, here's what the church building is going to look like for you. And so then it makes it real easy for you to know you're at the right place to pull into the church right there. That you know what it looks like then that you were looking for. But you really didn't care about on I-75 and I-16 what the scenery on the sides of the road was. Because it's 70 miles an hour, you weren't paying real close attention to were there crepe myrtles over there or pine trees or what on the side of the road. All right, then they talk about the different types of networks of LANs and WANs. So now they tell you what those two words were. They threw you a minute ago about LAN is a local area network. A WAN is a wide area network. There is no set definition between the two, okay? And I'm going to throw you some more. There's one or two more in here, and I'm going to throw you one or two additional terms of different terms that you'll see for them also out there. But LAN and WAN is your big categories. Been around forever. LAN says your network is in a local area, usually geographic area, okay? It could be in a building, in a high-rise building. It could be one floor of the building, so that you may have a LAN on one floor, another LAN on another floor, and that each floor is a separate LAN. Just think about some of the high-rises and how many offices are in them and everything else. You could have just as many offices and machines as we've got on this whole campus on one floor in the building. And depending on your company, you may have a different LAN to a different floor. Okay? A WAN is a wide area network, and that's where it's stretched out across usually a huge geographic area or between geographic areas. Sometimes you will see people refer that a lot of times the LAN will be seen as being just as in one building or a couple of buildings, or that's just in one city, and that if it goes between areas, it's a WAN, okay? Other people will tell you sometimes if you're going from building to building, you got a WAN. Not really, okay? So here on this campus, we've got a LAN for sure around on the campus, okay? Most definitions I hear most people saying on it would define our network between all of our campuses as a LAN still, but some other people would say it's a WAN because it's scattered over 80 miles or thereabouts from Polk County to Coosa County, okay? But it's all connected as if you were directly connected on each device, that we're not going across the internet to connect the campuses. If we were using a connection across the internet between the campuses, people would say it's a WAN, definitely, okay? The fact we've got a dedicated fiber line between them probably puts it back in LAN, but it could be a WAN. Am I making sense? So, if you can see it in a defined smaller area, it's a LAN. And usually, anytime I've seen questions on it, you could pretty well, where they're distinguishing between two or something, you pretty well go, wait a minute, I can figure out this one's a LAN, this one's a WAN. But there's a fair amount of difference on it. They're not going to make it real close, okay? So that's those. But if you're doing a WAN, normally you're going across the internet, although some people would say that fiber connection between the campuses would fit the same as going across the internet. Okay, that you're going across the high-speed connection between the two, and we make it a WAN. I would definitely define the entire state of Georgia network, and they actually do have all of their stuff connected together into back to it being a network. I would definitely find that as a WAN. Okay? Likewise, that it is a will-I internet. You've also got, besides LANs and WANs, you've got MANs and PANs. Okay? Those two aren't in the book. They come and go on their usage. Right now, you're seeing more usage of MAN. Really don't see much usage over of PAN, but you do see those thrown out there sometimes. They're terms that come and go. MAN is a metropolitan area network. So that would be one of those where we were saying, is it a LAN or is it a WAN that sort of falls in between? That's where you've got different facilities scattered across the city, all connected together. Or Northwest Georgia Technical College might be a MAN because we've got scattered, connected across this larger, quote, metropolitan area, if we want to call it that, across this rural metropolitan area, okay, of Northwest Georgia, that we stayed in a set area. Because you really think about it, you can go to some really large cities and they'd be covering the amount of territory we're talking about all in that one city. If you go down to Atlanta and consider how far out people consider themselves in Atlanta, it's just as far as we're scattered here from one spot to the other. Okay? A PAN is a personal area network. That term I don't hardly ever see, but I do see it once in a while. So that's why I want to throw it out at you. Obviously, MAN and PAN are not on the test, although I think they may mention them when we talk back about them later in the book. Okay? PAN is personal area network. That's where it's a network within your house type setup, okay? And that's where they're defining a personal area network. It is a LAN, just like a MAN would most likely be a LAN also, though it could be a WAN. But a personal area network is definitely a LAN. It's just a small LAN, okay? So we'll see those out there. A SAN, S-A-N, is a storage area network. Remember I said earlier when I was talking about the end devices, I said you could have disk drives or other storage devices sitting there as your end devices. You can have a bunch of them put there together. And that is a SAN, a storage area network, where you've just got storage devices sitting on your network. Not where you're sharing it off your computer or off the server, where it's a server with storage devices, but it's just a storage device there hooked to the network. I've got, in my car actually, a personal SAN device that's an external hard drive that's not designed to hook up to your PC, but it's designed to hook up to your network so that multiple people can get to it without having to go through one device and the device slowing you down. You're getting straight into that hard drive.
So kind of like a portable cloud type of deal.
And that's where you really is, the SAN is really getting into, is the cloud. So in this case of what I've got there, you've got personal cloud. Okay? There's actually one that's not working right because a guy that teaches here gave it to me a while back and asked if I can get his information off of it. And I thought it looks just like any other external drive, just like my external drive. And I went to try to plug it into my machine and discovered it wasn't going to work with the USB cables I had. Although I've got somewhere around the cable that'll work, because this actually got the square connector on the USB that plugs into it, which some of you may have seen, okay, instead of the rectangle. One's in the smaller, bigger rectangles. This has got a square connection. Probably got the size right there in the opening of the finger. And then it's got to be plugged into the network, and then you access it across the network using its network address. Well, apparently something's failing somewhere in it, and I'm gradually getting stuff pulled off of it. He couldn't get to anything in it, so I'm working miracles, in his opinion, anyway, although it's been taking a good while for me to do it, because it keeps getting bumped behind other stuff, because he told me there was no hurry on it. That's a mistake if you want something really done, because then everything else comes along, it's done real. It keeps getting bumped back. But it is a SAN, because it is a storage area network. You've got lots of companies out there that have got their own SANs that they've got instead, not a bunch of servers, but a bunch of big storage devices sitting there. When I worked at PMSC in South Carolina, which is a company that wrote software for insurance companies, policy management system, we had a dedicated building that we served, did the processing and storage for a number of insurance companies. And we had a SAN there. We had all of these. Actually there we had tape drives and hard drives all sitting there as part of the SAN that were directly connected onto the network. The cloud is actually working off the same thing, just taking the SAN to a much bigger thing. Because like your Amazon data centers or your Azure centers or whatever, it's just a huge amount of storage devices all put there that's running out off of there with a server or whatever. Not many servers actually sitting there, but server controlling, directing traffic on it, but the devices are going to the internet, correct? So yes, you were right. Does that make sense to y'all? And then they talk about wireless LANs. Also, that one you will see out there on the WLAN. That term I do see quite regularly out there, talking about versus like in here it's all wired, but in the same building we've also got wireless. And it's a separate network actually in the building, so we actually do have a wired student network, a wired faculty network, and we've got a wired wireless network where y'all can connect into on your phones. That y'all can get on the student network, I can get on the faculty one, or we can get on the guest one. Problem with the student one and the faculty one, it's using a single logon, and it doesn't seem to always work real well for me. So a lot of times, usually my phone's connected to guest, because I can get onto that one, even though it's a little bit slower. But I'm going for my phone. I don't need the fastest wireless. And I don't use that much of it anyway, but it does help. All right, y'all follow on those terms? A MAN, a LAN, a WLAN, a WAN, a PAN, and a SAN. And I don't know what a ZAN is, if you start with a Z, because we just about used up every other letter. So they go through that, and then they talk about intranets and all of that. I told you about those already. And then they talk about internet access connection technologies and about how you would hook your machine out there to your ISP. ISP is a term you definitely want to know if you don't already know it. And that's Internet Service Provider, and that's whoever's providing your internet for you. When we get later in the book, we'll find out there's different layers of internet service providers. That you're using the one that's directed towards us as a customer, but they have ISPs they connect to that do the broader background, do the background on the whole thing, okay? And so they talk about one in terms of home connections or small office connections to the internet. And when they're saying small office here, it's typically home office or an office that's just got one or two people connecting out, so your connection is just like at home. Although it could be a little bit more, but they mentioned that it could be dial-up, like we mentioned already. It could be DSL, which is still using the telephone line, but it's using digital telephone line instead of the analog service. It does require the telephone company has upgraded all their switches to digital equipment, and also means in some cases they have to upgrade to wiring, okay, to carry be able to carry that better signal on. They mentioned about cable right there, that it could be a cable connection, and that's what a lot of it done now. The cable connection could be a wired cable connection, using coax, like you've had for years of the cable TV, and now it's moving to doing fiber on it. And the reason they've moved to fiber for doing the cable connections is to carry all that data traffic across. Besides that, they can carry 500 channels on it instead of 50 channels on it. And if any of y'all have figured out what to do with 500 channels, let me know. Because almost everybody's got hundreds of channels. When you talk to them, they really only watch 5 of them, or 3 of them. And they have no idea in the world what all those other channels are. And then they mention also about satellite services available there too. It's used sometimes for that. Now, if it is an organization business, it's going to typically be using faster ones than that, but there are, like that said, small office, which could be smaller companies, smaller, even small manufacturing plants. A lot of the ones we've got around here and stuff may well fall into that small, that you may well go in and find out they've got just a cable connection, or they may even still be using a DSCO and L connection because there's only 5 or 10 employees use the internet and all at the plant, and that everybody else does stuff. It just varies. But with the large ones, it mentions still DSL right there, although a lot of times with those, it's not going to be DSL. They're going to be using these others. And very unlikely they're using satellite, except for some dedicated stuff on it. But very unlikely they're really using satellite down there also. More than likely they're using either dedicated leased lines, or I don't know why they don't have cable on there, but cable is used by a lot of businesses. And after all, that's what EPB is doing in Chattanooga. That's a cable provider that's providing the internet at gig or 10 gig, and that they're running across fiber to you, not dedicated fiber to your business, but you're sharing the fiber and doing those high speeds. So I don't know why they left that off the list right here. They should have dropped the bottom 2 and put cable instead. They did drop dial-up because you're not going to use dial-up for a large organization. Although, you may have a dial-up connection sitting there still as a backup if the other fails, that you can fall back to the dial-up. Exceedingly slow, but you still got a connection. Okay? And in the large organizations, you're quite often going to have a fast connection that you're normally always using, but also a backup slower connection of some type that you're still keeping there just in case when failure occurs. Because most of these providers are not providing 5 nines of service. Okay? Because if you got the 5 nines, 99.999% uptime, that means you're only down 5 minutes out of the year. 5.43 or something. It's just over 5. So just remember 5 minutes on 5 nines works. Okay? If they tell you got a higher percentage than that of more nines on there, that's less and less time on it. If they tell you less, it's more downtime you've probably got in a year. But 5 minutes is not much, but it's probably going to be more than that. You're down somewhat on the internet connection a lot of times in a year for a variety of reasons. As you're doing cable across there, you're doing fiber across there, there's always that idiot that goes out there and digs where they're not supposed to dig and cuts it right out there on the road. And a fiber connection is not easy to repair, so they're not going to have it repaired in 5 minutes. They may have a backup route where it does keep most people going, but somebody's going to get suspended anyway. And some of the fiber's running above ground, so it could break from ice hanging on it or whatever. Or tree limbs falling on it, or whatever else. All right, any questions on all of that? But if not, I'm going to stop at that point, because that's where I stopped yesterday, and then we'll finish it out on Thursday. because we get into the word converge right there, and that's a word y'all gotta learn. So you'll know what converge means in here. And when you see some of the different providers' trucks out there where they got the word converge on them, why in the world they say they're converged networks, or that's the name of the company or whatever, that word has meaning there. Okay? It actually has dual meanings. It means two totally different things in network. And y'all are going to find that one along the way too. That we're going to find some things you got to think about the context it's in to realize what is the acronym stand for or what the word is meaning right there. So that's going to be one. ATM is going to be another one. Because what do y'all all think when I say ATM?
The little machines that you put your credit card in.
The automatic teller machine. The protocol that's used to communicate with that and also used to do other communications with other devices too sometimes, but particularly it does get used with that, but also used to communicate other times across the internet. One of the many protocols y'all will run is also ATM and stands totally different. And at the moment I can't even remember what the word ATM stands for. Okay? And sometimes I'm reading an article and they're using ATM both ways, and that gets confusing. You gotta stop and think, wait a minute, that you just put in your mind that you're thinking the teller machine and go, wait a minute, that didn't make sense, that sentence I just read. And then you read it again and go, oh, wait a minute, that was the protocol. Don't forget the permission slips if you haven't gotten them to me.